Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Dattitude, episode number 143, our live Friday show. We're going to have a lot of fun. I am Jim Derry, and I'm happy to have David Grubb with us. He is the host of Hard in the Paint podcast, as well as doing all sorts of things related to the Pelicans. I see that you're even contributing to Sports Illustrated, SI.com, and see your preview videos. I enjoy those, and we're glad to have you on the show. David, it's been a little while. What's going on with you this morning?
You know, it's just that time of year with the Pelicans in the heat of a playoff race. And then, of course, I do work with MLBBro.com. So the baseball season has gotten going, and I'm really excited about that as well.
We're going to talk about MLBBro.com because I saw that, and I was very interested to see. You're going to let you talk a little bit about that and see what that's all about. But here's what the lineup is for the show. We got some new graphics, so we're just going to, I spent this week doing some different things. So here's what we got going on the show. Here are the top topics of the day. Obviously, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the Pelicans. 3-1 road trip. Woo! Man, needed that game last night against the Denver Nuggets, and they got it. Helped shake that loss to the Warriors. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Dub's gotten Pels' head, I think, a little bit. We're going to get into that. Final four is the UConn Huskies. Are they the favorite now in this the craziest Final Four, I think, of my lifetime? I'll ask David what he thinks in a little bit. And, of course, the LSU women are eyeing the national title. They have a Final Four semifinals matchup tonight against top-seeded Virginia Tech. We're also going to talk again about MLB's opening day, the new rules. Do you like them? Do you not like them? I think we like them so far. We'll see what David has to say. And then also we'll finish it off talking about the Saints and what we think what direction they might go in the draft. So that's the lineup for the show today on Dattitude. But we got to start off with the Pelicans. And David, I tell you, and we kind of talked a little bit about it off the air, but after that Tuesday debacle, you're up by 20 points, you're up by 17 at the half, and the way the third quarter started and ended against Golden State just kind of killed you. And I was really worried. And look, great, Jokic doesn't play. That doesn't mean that I wasn't worried about how this team was going to come out after that Tuesday game. But they came out and they took care of business.
Yeah, I think everybody had to be worried after the Warriors game, the way that it ended, because, the conventional wisdom being, they were on the second day of a back-to-back. Well, the Pelicans were rested going into that game.
Right.
They had 5 straight blowouts going into that. The starters had played roughly at the most 33 minutes in a game. So you weren't seeing them log heavy minutes. They should have been rested for that Warriors game. And I think it showed right there mentally the gap between a championship team and a team trying to get to that level. So for them to come back, and even with the gift of Jokic not playing, you still had to get that win. There was no way reasonably that they could come back to New Orleans and be a game under 500, lose 2 in a row on the back end of that road trip, and have anybody feel comfortable about what's about to happen over these last 5 games, which are really difficult.
And especially with what's happened elsewhere. I thought before the road trip that if they went 2-2, they could navigate things. But because of the way that Tuesday went, I thought it was so super important to get the win, like you said. But not only that, because of what the other teams are doing, I mean, the Lakers starting to look like the Lakers that they wanted to be. LeBron back and playing pretty close to LeBron, his old self. Not quite there, but, he's going to get there by the time the playoffs get here. So with the way that everything's going, Dallas isn't playing that great. Oklahoma City's playing a little bit better. The Pels can't afford anything. I mean, although they're on the cusp of 6, they're also on the cusp of 10 or 11.
And, the fortunate thing for them is that, Portland has called it a season. They wrapped it up. So their chances of making it have improved dramatically because really it's 11 teams now fighting for 10 spots. It's no longer 12. It's essentially 11. You're trying to see if Utah is going to figure themselves out and get back in it. But everybody else is pretty much a lock. And I think for the Pelicans, it's about positioning unless they really go off the deep end over this next week. This week is so critical for them because it's 4 home games. They have chances to beat teams that are all in front of them in the standings. And, to get these victories is going to be huge because matchups become so critical in this playoff race.
What's funny is if you go back and after that Rockets lost, to think that if someone would have told us that, hey, they're going to win 6 of the next 7, we would have probably been excited, thrilled, whatever. And yet still, here we are, winning 6 of 7. And I don't know how much better I feel about this team than I did after that. Of course, you feel better. And we showed the schedule and who they've defeated. And they've defeated the teams they were supposed to beat since that Houston loss. But at the same time, now it's crunch time. You talk about coming home and playing 4 games in a row at home before closing it up against Minnesota. Now looking back, they had to win 6 of 7.
Just to give themselves a chance. Like, they don't have anything guaranteed at this point. They just have a chance. And so, yeah, it's great to be in position, but it's as much an act of what's gone on around them. Like you said, that other teams have stumbled as well. No one has separated themselves. So the Pelicans have been fortunate in that. So, yeah, the questions that existed before they started winning, they haven't changed. I don't think you feel like you've gotten answers to any of those questions. It's just that they're still in the same place, essentially, that they were before the Houston game, before that loss. They're still fighting for their lives, and they can't lose any games, really. You're in a position where you've got to get to 500. Like, at the end of the season, if you can get to 41 wins, you feel comfortable about being in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's what it takes. I think 41 to get in the playoff, to play in realistically, is where you got to be, and we'll see how that happens. Here with David Grubb on this Friday morning, as we do every Friday morning in our live show at 9:15 a.m., Dattitude Podcast. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them there. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, they will appear. We'll show them on the screen. If you're watching on Twitter, you'll have to tweet at me, at Jim Derry Jr., and we'll try to get that on the air as well. We'll be here till around 10 o'clock or so, and see how it goes. Got a lot to talk about today. Want to stay on this Pelicans thing. I want to, man, you talk about Brandon Ingram and what he's been able to do and stepping up his game. He came off the injury and worried about him for about a week and a half, 2 weeks. It seemed like to take him to get back into basketball shape. But now, 2 triple-doubles, the first 2 triple-doubles of his career in a week. I mean, he has just kind of taken this thing over.
He's playing to the level that he's expected to. And I mean, quite frankly, this is what he was supposed to be doing all season long. This is what not a triple-double every night.
Right.
But being the best player on the floor by and large for the Pelicans. That's what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be the leader of this team. They put him in the middle of all the marketing. They made him the franchise player while Zion Williamson was gone. And even with that, he looked like he wanted to assume that. He made himself he put himself in that position. So, to me, the criticism of Brandon Ingram this year has been because people expected him to play like an all-star every night. And he hadn't done that. He had good games. He was scoring, but he wasn't playing like an all-star. This last stretch, we've seen him play like the guy we saw at the end of last season and in the playoffs. But he's got to continue to do that, and he has to do that against the best teams. He didn't have his best game against Golden State. So he's got to show that he can do that against the best teams, because it's not just good enough to be the best player against bad teams.
Man, you're sounding like a dad that's a little harsh there, David. I mean, the dude scored 2 triple-doubles. I mean, like, this is what you're supposed – I mean, man.
Not the triple-doubles, but he should not be the best player for the Pelicans by default. You know what I mean? Like, he should be asserting himself in that level, and that's what you want to see. I think that's an embracing of his ability. Because if we didn't have that expectation, the same with Zion, the reason people are so optimistic is because he can change the course of the game.
He is turning into this quiet leader. You can see it. I mean, he's always been a quiet dude, but you could see now that, man, don't mess with me. I mean, that kind of thing, and I'm so glad to see that's the next stage of development in his career. I think that we're really seeing that now with him. And I love watching players grow. That's one of my favorite things. And really, frankly, one of the reasons why I've always loved covering high school. You see these kids develop as they go through, and they're such different kids once they become seniors. But to me, we're watching Brandon Ingram grow to almost star level. And I know he's been an all-star. That's not what I'm talking about. It's a different kind of level, and I think we're seeing that in front of our eyes.
Hopefully. The one thing is you don't want to have to push it out of him.
Yeah.
And it feels like that's the level that that he hasn't reached yet. Like there has to be this motivation because he did struggle with it. And there was some questions within and out without the locker room. Those come to Jesus meetings that CJ McCollum is talking about. Part of that is about guys asking Brandon Ingram to step up, and it's not that they don't believe in him. It's because they do. They know how good he can be. And so they're asking him to assert himself. He has to lead them home. He has to be the guy because CJ just isn't capable. He knows this.
That's where I was going next.
So they need Brandon to be that guy. Like you said, all-star doesn't mean anything. That's a statistical designation. Superstar is a guy who leads his team and creates winning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And does it worry you at all? I mean, I got to say, now last night I thought he played very well. But there have been times when CJ just doesn't show up. And he takes poor shots at times. He doesn't pass it, I think, when he needs to pass it, which I didn't see last year when he came here. I don't know if he's pressing too much or trying to do too much at different times. But last night I thought he played well. But for the most part, for the past month or so, I got to say I'm disappointed with the way he's played. And to me, he needs to be that guy. He doesn't need to be Brandon Ingram to Brandon Ingram's level, but he needs to be that guy. He's been kind of this adult in the room since he's come here. And I don't know. There's just something I can't put my finger on with CJ McCollum that has bothered me a little bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for CJ is that he's playing the wrong role.
Yeah.
He's having to be the second guy, and he's supposed to be the third.
Yeah.
At this stage in his career. And I think he's put in a position where he has to deal with the ball too much.
Yeah.
He is supposed to be a quick decision. Like you get in a pick and roll and make one decision and done. But he's having to run the offense way too much. And that's a problem with the roster construction. The Pelicans don't have a point guard. They don't have a point guard. So when you have that situation and you're not playing Kyra Lewis, Dyson Daniels really does not run the offense when he's more of a defensive player at this stage. They don't have anybody besides Brandon and CJ who are going to handle the ball in the half court. You don't really trust Josh Richardson to run the offense. So I think that's a big problem for the Pelicans is that's where teams take advantage of them is you force those two guys, just Brandon and CJ, to make the decisions. And both of them can be high turnover guys when they're having, bad nights. CJ's had a lot of 5-6 turnover games. So is Brandon when they are really forced into those situations. So the ball has to move for the Pelicans.
You miss Jose Alvarado, don't you?
They really do. They really do. And it's not just, it's that they miss his energy, but you miss that depth of having another ball handler, somebody who can break pressure, somebody who can get in the paint and kick it out. They just don't have enough guys who can do that right now.
You miss a real pain in the ass for the opponent. Because that's what he is. I mean, he's like a bee that stings you in the backside that you just can't get rid of. And you talk about his energy. To me, that's what I miss more than anything. He was the guy who last year, and you look at like what's different from last year. They didn't have Zion last year at this time. What's different to me? That's the number one factor.
They are not the same activity-wise on defense without Jose. Herb is an elite. Herb Jones is an elite defender. Elite. I mean, just it's going to be a shame that he doesn't make first team All-NBA because he just won't because the Pelicans aren't good enough. But you look at the rest of that team defensively, they aren't great individual defenders. They can play as a unit, okay, and they're top 5 defense in the league because of that as a group. But Jose is the only one, like you said, who can be an irritant in that regard, that can not only create stuff, but just get inside the other team and upset their apple cart, make them think about him. And that part defensively changes how teams, operate. They have to know where Jose is and what he's doing. They have to be aware that he might sneak up and steal the ball. So that changes your awareness, and it changes how you get into things. And that little bit of interruption for an NBA offense is so important.
Jim Derry here with David Grubb on this Friday morning Dattitude episode number 143, March 31st. I did not have any April Fool's jokes for anybody because, I'm going to save them. I'm going to save them for the monologue, which you can hear wherever you find your podcast. Dattitude, my monologue will be added to this show. Who knows what we might have. And we'll have something good for you. We'll save it up. All right, we got to talk about the Zion in the room. We see him. Look, I love the fact that he is engaged. He's not just this guy sitting on the bench. I mean, I feel better about where I'm. And look, I know a lot of fans are ticked off, and he's a 22-year-old kid, which is what people forget to realize. I am so sick of people talking about how he's a bust and he's this and he's that. He's 22 years old. He's not Michael Thomas. It's a completely different situation. Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that even though he has not been able to get on the court for 2 months, 2.5 months now, look, he is there every night and he's doing his job the best he can. And I think that if he gets a chance to come on and play the last 2 games or get in there in the play-in or whatever it is, he's going to be a factor one way or another.
I mean, he's absolutely going to be a factor because you have to account for him on offense the way few players in the NBA. You know, he changes the entire way you play defense because you can't really account for him one-on-one. There's nobody who can guard him in the league one-on-one. And that's a problem. And in a playoff series in particular, because he can create a mismatch every time down the floor. The question for Zion, of course, is where are the Pelicans going to be with 3 games left in the season? Where is he health-wise, and where are they? You saw him warming up yesterday before the game. He still looks a little heavy. You know, I mean, he hasn't been running. I mean, a hamstring injury means you're not running a lot. You're not exploding a lot because they're trying not to have that thing pop. So he looks a little heavy. That means he's probably not going to be – you don't count on him to be playing 25 to 30 minutes, probably just under 25. If you can get him 25 minutes a game at the end of this regular season, if that's available, I don't see why David Griffin won't do it. Because the one thing you have to have of this team is more information. Like, you're going into next season already – like, if just thinking about that, no matter what, you're still not expecting this team to win a championship this year, even if Zion comes back. So if you're thinking about next year, everybody is going to be under the gun. No matter what the pressure is going to be immense.
We wouldn't go back to the Van Gundy experiment where he came in with either 4 minutes left or it was like, okay,
it won't be like that kind of burst.
Time.
But I think the time will. I think there will be a time restriction. But I think it'll be, if you're going to use him. To me, you got to start him because that you can't rest. Once you get warmed up, you gotta let him play. And I think it'll be like that though. That he'll play his full first half, minutes together in a string, and then he'll play his full second half minutes in a string, and you see what you can get. But it all depends on where the Pelicans are when he gets back. If they stumble in these first 3 before he's eligible to return, then there may not be a reason to put him on the floor. Well, so I think that's going to be the question.
We look at the schedule and. This is not anything but easy. I mean, you just beat the Clippers, so they're going to be ready to come in here and play with fire. You're talking about Sacramento, maybe the best offense in the NBA. And you're talking about Memphis, who now with Ja back is really starting to play. So you talk about those 3 games. And will he come back for the Knicks and the Timberwolves? We don't know. But, I mean, to be realistic, you want to go, obviously, 2-1 over the stretch, but I mean that is a tough stretch at home, David. I don't know what are your expectations for what they need to do over the course of these next 3 games against 3 of the better teams in the West.
You got to try to win the first 2, because that back-to-back with Sacramento and Memphis is ridiculous.
Yeah,
that's really hard because Sacramento's going to run you the night before, and then Memphis is going to run you the next night.
Right.
So those are up-tempo teams. The Clippers, at least, are going to be slow. You've had a lot of success over them. 8 out of the last 9, the Pelicans have won. So, you feel confident in that. So you win the first one, then you've got to put everything into beating the Kings. You got to put everything into beating the Kings that night. Because if you lose to the Kings and then you're back-to-back with Memphis the next night, psychologically, and then let's say you put the pressure of Zion, let's say they decide he's coming back on Wednesday. Can you imagine the pressure then for that situation if they're at 1-1 with Zion coming back for the Memphis game and then having the Knicks on the weekend? That's just the situation just around the team will be insane.
All right, before we move on, prediction. Does Zion play this year? Does he play in the regular season, or does he play in a potential play-in game, or does he not play at all?
I will say if they make the play-in, Zion will play in the play-in.
I think that's exactly the case. I think that maybe, David, that you do throw him in a regular season finale if he's ready and you look like you're going to make the play-in just so he can get in there and feel like, okay, the first time I play in 3 months is not in a play-in game. I think that no matter what happens, I don't see how that Timberwolves game doesn't mean something. No matter what happens over the course of the next 4 games, you got to think it's going to mean something as far as people don't understand. And I had to actually go back and look at it. The difference between 7, 8, 9, and 10, all big major differences, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, I should say. Because if you're in the play-in, and people don't realize this, you play the 7-8 game. If you're 7, you play at home. You win, that's it. You're moving on. You're playing your 2 seed and you're moving on. If you lose, then you got to host the 9-10 winner and hope you win that one. I mean, so it's a really big deal as far as where you finish. And we saw it last year. The Pelicans got hot. Luckily, they were in 9 and not 10, and they were able to play that home game against San Antonio. And then before going on the road, and just got the right matchup to go on the road. So you can't count on that. You need to be as high as you can possibly get. It matters.
Yeah, and if you are on the play-in, you want to host one of those games, because the Pelicans, we know that they have not been a great road team, as particularly against good teams on the road. And yeah, they picked up 2 wins over 500 teams against the Clippers and against Denver. But again, those all wins are not created equal.
Right.
So we'll see, in that cauldron of going into the postseason, it's a lot different of having to win 2 in a row on the road. And then you're talking about starting a playoff series on the road. So you're talking about the last game of the season on the road, 2 play-ins potentially on the road, and then starting the playoffs on the road. That is a hard road to toe.
It most certainly is. And so we'll see if Zion comes back at all. I said when he went out, I think it was about a week after he went out, I said I thought he would be gone the rest of the regular season. And people told me I was crazy. And I'm like, I've seen this movie before.
It's a hamstring. Yeah.
But you're being safe. And I get it. You're talking about, like you said, even though on January 3rd or January 4th, when we go back and we look at the standings, they were in 3rd place in the West at the time. I don't know that you felt like you could rush him back, because he is the future of this franchise along with Brandon Ingram, and you just can't rush these things. Not in today's NBA. It's a different NBA than you and I watched 10, 15, 20 years ago. It just is.
You don't expect Zion Williams to be with this team for 20 years. This is not that kind of league. So
no.
If your bet is, and this is the thing, in the NBA, you are betting on the talent. That's what you're doing. And Zion is the most talented player on your roster.
Yep.
You are going to give him every opportunity to prove you wrong. You know what I'm saying? That's the bet that the Pelicans, that's the money they have invested in him until this second contract is over. They are going to give him every opportunity to prove that they made a bad investment. You know what I'm saying? As far as they're concerned, 100%. It's a good one. And I don't blame them. I mean, you don't get this opportunity. And if you can get 3-4 solid, healthy years out of Zion Williamson before he decides to move on in the next phase of his career, which is the way the NBA works nowadays, nobody stays forever anymore. So if you get 4 solid years out of him, take it.
Sounds like a bad song somewhere. Nobody stays forever. That's like a old
Country
80s
song.
love song or something. I don't know what that is, but there's something in there somewhere. All right, let's move on. We got about 20 minutes left in the show, and we still got quite a few things to talk about. I want to jump to the Final Four, and I want to jump to the LSU women. It is exciting what Kim Mulkey has been able to bring back to this program, and not just the players that she has, but just the buzz, and to see the PMAC packed with women playing basketball. They're packing the PMAC over the women. They don't care about the men this year, and for lots of reasons. And it's just no matter what happens tonight, David, it's been such a fun season and fun to watch with these girls.
I mean, you look at women's basketball, and it's having a great couple of years. The last 2 years and completely. And I think what you're seeing is the women's game has the stars now. These are the players the names that you recognize are in the women's game, not in the college, not in the men's game anymore in college. So, and it's not the same college game that you think about 20 years ago with the women, where you only had to know 4 or 5 teams.
Right.
Now you've got to look it up and down the brackets and see that they're, when you're talking about Iowa being in the Final Four for women, that's not normal. Say LSU hasn't been there in 20 years.
You saying Caitlin Clark's pretty good?
She's pretty good. When you're dropping 40-point triple doubles in the NCAA tournament, you're doing all right for yourself.
Yeah.
There's some phenomenal individual names. Every team has at least one player that you have a name brand coming in with that has a huge following already. And I mean, LSU's got multiple players, Angel Reese,
multiple players,
Floje Johnson. You have all these players that people know now. And of course, Kim Mulkey, whether you love her or hate her, and there's, good reasons for both. If anybody wants to get into it, but the main thing is in college sports, she's one of the few iconic figures remaining in that sport as far as coaches go. And she brings that lightning wherever, like you said, it's whether it's positive attention, whether it's negative. She says, look, if it gets one more person in the building, I'm good with that. And it does. It packs the PMAC. They're going to get that building's probably going to get renovations because she's paying for them, with selling tickets over there.
Can we love her, but not necessarily love that Muppet jacket that she wears? That's bad, man. I mean, when my wife comes out, I'm like, my wife, look, she's not a huge basketball fan. But she stopped and she looked and she listened. And she doesn't know who Kim Mulkey is. She goes, what is that lady wearing? I'm like, she's wearing clothes that gets people to pay attention. And people are paying attention, I guess.
I mean, that last one was extra. And look, I mean,
did you just want to say phenomenon?
Yeah, she's robbing Craig Sager's
she sure is.
closet, but
I never even thought about that.
That's probably her spirit animal. She and Craig could have been a couple in another lifetime or something.
I think you're right. The late great Craig Sager. Will you talk? But what do you think about LSU's chance? I mean, look, South Carolina, and I said that again yesterday. I mean, no disrespect to LSU, but I think the winner of the South Carolina-Iowa game is the clear favorite to win this championship, and obviously South Carolina is the clear favorite at about minus 360 or whatever they are. But that being said, Iowa presents this massive challenge that I think they're going to be the toughest out South Carolina is going to have. And that includes if South Carolina wins the championship game on Sunday. This Iowa team is legit, and I think it's going to be a tight game into the fourth quarter. And I think a lot of Gamecocks fans are going to be clenching. They're going to be holding on to whatever they can hold on to because that's going to be a fun one. Again, no disrespect to LSU or Virginia Tech. To me, that's the game to watch.
That's the one everybody's tuning in for. It's just like last year, the game in the national semifinals. It was no disrespect to the eventual national champions, but everybody knew Carolina Villanova in the men's semifinals was the game. That was the game to watch. That was the de facto national championship. And I think that's the same thing here is you have the great individual story in Caitlin Clark, the best women's player in the game right now. And then you have the best team over the last several years with the best coach in the country. So you take that, and you have a National Player of the Year, National Defensive Player of the Year going. I think the formula and the styles are perfect because South Carolina wants a slow, grinded down game, but that's where individual players usually come and make a big difference because it comes down to one or two shots. And if you're Caitlin Clark, you're like, I believe I can make those shots. And I believe she does. So I think this is the perfect game for this to come down to a final possession and us maybe see an upset. But I think the national public wants to see LSU versus South Carolina in that national championship to see that rivalry on the biggest stage.
Dawn Staley's got a little bit of mean streak, doesn't she?
I love it. But I mean, that's loving coaches. Yeah, I want that kind of, Gino Auriemma, Pat Summitt. That's what you want. John Thompson, the great coaches in college basketball.
Don't get me started on John Thompson with that towel, man. I hated Georgetown growing up as a kid. There was something about John Thompson that just rubbed me the wrong way. I think today, as an older man, I think I'd embrace it a little bit more. But when I was a kid, I mean, he just wins. He just wins, and that air about him, that arrogance.
I love John Thompson. That was
man.
I met him. A quick story. I met him at the Final Four in New Orleans. The notorious Michigan Final Four.
Doing a color analyst.
And I was running up to him. I'm like, Coach, can I get your autograph? And he's like, open the pen, young man. I was like,
I love it. He's a great color analyst. Do you listen to him?
Oh, yeah,
he's phenomenal. Fantastic. He really is.
The resonance of that voice and just his knowledge of the game.
Yeah, I could see him being, your daddy. You're like, oh yeah, I'm whatever you say, sir. That kind of thing. He's definitely got you listen to whatever he says. All right, let's jump over to the men. Talking about John Thompson, it's getting me fired up about the Final Four and the men, because I don't know that I've been as we were talking about. Is it a letdown because it's not Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, and Villanova, or are you excited that it's UConn and Miami and Florida Atlantic and San Diego State? To me, I'd rather see this kind of Final Four. I am sick of Kansas. I am sick of Duke. I am sick of North Carolina. I mean, Jay Wright's gone, so if Villanova would have made it, it would have been a great story, but they stunk this year. But I want this fresh blood in the Final Four, and I am excited to watch it.
I think basketball fans are excited about the mix. I think TV executives are not.
Yes.
That's the difference is, because the markets are so skewed now. You've got two markets, in Florida with Florida Atlantic and Miami that are not big basketball markets. So you're not going to get a ton of eyeballs there. You get UConn, which is a decent media market. They bring that New York, suburban area, but not a whole bunch. And then, of course, San Diego State, not a big basketball market. So for them, if you're a TV person, but I think the interest, and you look at the stories that have come out of this tournament because of the Florida Atlantic making it, because this with Brian Dutcher at San Diego State, the 6 degrees of separation for him to get to the Final Four, 30 years since the last time he was there.
I still see Chris Webber.
It gives me chills because that's what I grew up with, So I'm a big Brian Dutcher fan, knowing who he was with that team. And to see him get this opportunity to take that team, they were 22-0 when COVID hit, it's not like he hasn't been working for this opportunity. This is the guy who recruited Kawhi Leonard,
He's not the greatest interview on the planet, though.
I love Coach Dutcher, man. I just love that.
I mean, to me, he is never. You can't ask him anything about himself. I mean, and he's not even gonna reap praise on anyone. It's kind of it's. You can predict what he's going to say. I mean, if you were covering San Diego State, you could basically write his quote before you even went to press.
And I think it's just a fantastic story, though.
It is a great story.
And you think about for New Orleans, the connection that New Orleans has to San Diego State.
Absolutely. I was there. 1993 when the Final Four in 93, I was there.
But even Marshall Faulk, Ray Peterson, guys, the football connection with San Diego State. You talk Curtis Johnson and the guys that he recruited out there for all those years. So it's there's a lot to it. And I think that it's just a fantastic story. UConn obviously is probably the favorite at this stage. But whoever wins, it won't be predicted. And I think that's the first time we could really say that since Villanova won it back in 85.
Yeah. Do you think Florida Atlantic has a chance?
I like San Diego State to beat Florida Atlantic. Yeah, I mean, I just think San Diego State's a little bit better. I mean, but it's a great run. I mean, if they do get...
You're rooting for San Diego State, but do you think they win it?
Yeah,
you do think
I don't think they win the championship, no.
That's what I mean.
I think they get to the championship final, but I don't think they win it, no.
I think UConn, and I've said this, I was afraid to say it, I think, before the tournament, although I said they were the best value on the board. I think they were 22-1 to win the tournament before it started. It dropped down real quick to 10-1. And I really thought that they were going to be the best team in the tournament, or one of the best teams, certainly underrated as a 4 seed. That to me was ridiculous. And you saw it early on. I just don't know if UConn can be beat, even in this tournament where all kinds of wild things can happen. And Miami's a pain in the keister, and we saw them come back last weekend. I just don't think anybody can beat UConn.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought UConn got a really poor seed. I didn't understand a lot of what the NCAA tournament committee did this year in placing teams. It was extremely
really weird,
just off. I think they need to reevaluate how they do this, but the seeding was not great this year. UConn has to be a pretty significant favorite the rest of the way.
I agree.
And, I just don't know if other teams have the depth, that in this stage that it's going to take, or the individual player talent that you're looking at and say, who's got the best player? UConn has the best collection of players.
All right. I hate that we're all chalk, but we're obviously in agreement. UConn versus San Diego State, and UConn win it all, which I think UConn San Diego State would be really, really fun to watch on Monday night. All right, what is your prediction for the women? I've got South Carolina playing Virginia Tech. No offense, Tigers fans, and South Carolina winning. Although, again, I will say, I think tonight they're going to have their hands full. I don't think it's a double-digit victory tonight.
Me neither.
I think they're going to struggle. I think they're going to win it by between 4 and 6, and it's going to go down to the final 2 minutes. But I do think it's South Carolina, Virginia Tech, and I think the Gamecocks are the best team in the country. I've said it all season long. I think their record proves it. I think Dawn Staley proves it. I think the entire ridiculously talented WNBA roster proves it. What's your prediction?
I think we do end up with the story. We get LSU versus South Carolina.
Okay.
I'm going to just go with that on my gut. But I do think South Carolina is the best team. I just think we're going to get the good drama to go into next year. And it'll be, LSU, South Carolina 3 next season. So I'm looking forward to that.
I think next year it's going to be a lot closer between those two, not just because Aaliyah Boston's probably going to leave and go to the WNBA, because South Carolina is still going to be uber talented and they still have the best coach on the planet, maybe in any. I mean, I'm talking about anywhere. I mean, Dawn Staley just scares me. We're talking about John Thompson before. I think if Dawn Staley came to my house and opened the pen, you say I would probably have to back off a little bit. That's kind of how I think it would be. Yes, Mom. That kind of thing. But I am looking forward to next year because I think LSU right now, David, may be playing with a little stage fright still. I don't like the way that Angel Reese is I think that, I don't know if she's going to come back, but I think she needs another year to come back because she is not ready for the big time, in my opinion. But I think with one more year of seasoning, she really could be.
LSU has not found the arrogance that comes yet.
No.
They are still surprised at times.
Yes.
And you see them, the players, the way they react is like, oh, we won again.
Yes.
And they have not gotten to the point where they expect to win. And I think, that's the big difference. And next year, they're adding the number one player to, one of the top players in the country. They'll be older. They'll be more experienced as a group. Because remember, they had a lot of turnover these first 2 years.
Exactly.
They're going to be a really difficult team to deal with next season.
All right, about 7-8 minutes left. Let's talk about. We still got to talk about Major League Baseball, and we're going to finish up with the Saints. MLB opening day. First of all, tell me about. Is it a new venture? Because I have not seen it until I was going through some things on Twitter. Tell me about MLBBro.com.
This is our third season, and
okay.
But
how did I miss it before then?
Because we had been growing. That first year we started by Rob Parker, okay. Longtime sports journalist and Hall of Fame a voter for the Hall of Fame for Major League Baseball. And this is something. It was his passion. He came to a few of us. There were about 11 of us to start, and he said he wanted to focus and tell the stories of Black and brown major leaguers and celebrate them because we were starting to see a resurgence that yes. Black players were coming back to the game. And so we wanted to highlight that and kind of, get something that continued that growth because we all had a passion for the game of baseball and felt like our presence in there was something that the game needed. The more people, the better. And so this year we entered into a partnership with Major League Baseball. They came to us and were like, we love what you're doing. We want to expand it. So we're able to provide content for MLB.com. Some of our writing and some of our social media stuff will be there. And then we just do it. We have a podcast that comes out every week, the MLB Bro Pod, the mixtape where we present stories and stats and things with music and things like that. So it's just a really fun way to look at the game of baseball, to talk about the players. We've had buy-in from the Players Alliance. LaTroy Hawkins works with us. Gary Sheffield Jr., CC the Bathia, the Players Alliance have talked with us. So it's great that the players in the game are embracing us. The next generation of major leaguers has started to embrace us. And we're having a lot of fun covering a game that we all love.
Why has it become more prevalent among Black and brown players? Why are there more major league? Why are they getting more into the major league? Now, I know that Major League Baseball had a big initiative that started probably about a decade or so ago to get into the inner cities and get youth interested in baseball again, because there was a 20, 30 year period or so where Black kids just didn't want to play baseball. They didn't care about baseball, but you do see it more prevalent now. Why is that?
Like you said, the money got invested to give access because there weren't ballparks anymore. Yeah. Where kids could just go and play ball. Baseball had become like a country club industry where you had to pay so much money to be part of teams that it just wasn't getting into the public schools or in the neighborhoods where these kids were. And so you've had programs like the RBI initiative, and you've had Andre Dawson's initiative to get, urban
My
youth.
favorite player of all time, by the way. My favorite.
And his tournament was in New Orleans this year at the, out at the lakefront. So you've had these big programs start trickling down and filtering into the mainstream, and you're starting to see the benefits. And I think kids too look at it and you say, football is a short career. Yes. Baseball, even if you get a shot, if you get a chance, you can make good money playing baseball in the minor leagues. Now you see the developments there with their first collective bargaining agreement. You see the negotiations becoming more and more fair to young players, and the baseball contracts are guaranteed, and there's money there, and there's a lot of money, and baseball is making record revenues. So to get involved in that industry, it makes nothing but sense.
I saw Nico Horner signed a 3-year, $35 million contract. Now, look, I'm a Cubs fan. I love Nico Horner. He's a great infielder. But you're telling me Nico Horner is making the same kind of money that a stud star wide receiver would make in the NFL. If that can't get kids to open their eyes and play, as Emac says, and you retire in much better health. I mean, but if that can't get every kid, I don't care whether you're white, brown, yellow, orange, green, it doesn't make a difference. Show me the money, and that's money.
Absolutely. I mean, you see this. I remember when $3 million, I remember Ricky Henderson and Kirby Puckett got $3 million.
Yes.
And we were like, oh my gosh. I remember Dave Winfield got $1 million.
$1 million.
Catfish Hunter got $1 million. It was like, oh my gosh, the world is coming to an end. And now, you're seeing utility infielders get $7 million a year. You see guys getting $11 million to be, and Shohei Ohtani is probably going to get $60 million. You think about it, like his next contract, he's probably going to get 50 to 60 million guaranteed per year. It's crazy. And
well, I love it. I love the interest in this game because baseball has always been my favorite sport. Don't get me wrong. I love football. I love basketball, although it takes me a little bit longer to get into basketball because football drags. Everything we do revolves around football. So by the time I get into basketball, it's probably January. But to me, there's something about baseball that it's different than everything else. And I know it's every day, and some people can't do it, and the grind is long, but there's just something about baseball. And I think it maybe my favorite times are growing up, spending time with my grandfather and, going to see major league teams play spring training games here. And I'm actually old enough to go see the old Pelicans play in 1977 when Tony La Russa was on the team back in the Superdome, which was ridiculous. But, so I don't know. I think growing up with it, maybe that's why. But there's just something about baseball, and I'm glad to see that it is starting to maybe take another step.
I was so, I think there are a lot of people who criticize the World Baseball Classic and say it's unnecessary. It's just a marketing tool. But I think it's it is a marketing tool because you're trying to sell the game and make it grow. And you can see that the world, I think Major League Baseball, the best thing that it's learning is that the world is much more relaxed about baseball, and we're starting to see the death of the unwritten rules, and we're just letting people enjoy the game. And that part is I think is great for the game of baseball, that we embrace the culture of enjoying it. It doesn't have to be something you sit on your hands for.
That's one of the things that I think is changing, and baseball is embracing culture like they've never embraced it before, because frankly, they had to. If they hadn't, they'd have been extinct like the dinosaur. And to me, it's this colorful game now where you do see personalities and personalities from everywhere. And so to me, you talk about the World Baseball Classic, of course it's a marketing tool, but I tell you, it was a lot of fun to watch this year. I mean, and I never thought I would get into it. I started watching it because there was nothing else on. I'm like, man, this is pretty good. And I stuck with it.
They were getting huge ratings for, again, beating out NBA games, beating out regular season Major League Baseball games. And I think you want that passion. Sports is driven by passion. Entertainment is driven by passion. And that's what the World Baseball Classic stirs up for people, is that passion about the game that they love.
No doubt about it. What did you think about the new rules? I'm not, some of them I don't care one way or the other. I mean, I know there's like this, there's no more shift anymore and people losing their minds. I don't care one way or the other. I mean, to me, it is what it is. It's the same for everyone. I never really liked the shift anyway. I thought it was dumb. I'm kind of glad it's gone. I thought I would hate the big bases thing. I guess I really don't care if it's going to make stolen bases go up and help offense, great, and help protect players, which they say it's also going to do. But the one rule that came into that I didn't think I would like, but I really do after just one day, is the pitch clock.
Yes.
The pitch clock and stop stepping out rule, whatever you want to call it. I mean, somewhere Joe, what's his name, who sang Stepping Out? Joe Jackson, whatever the hell his name was back then. But I think it's great. I mean, games in 2 hours and 30 minutes is phenomenal.
That is the pace that you want for baseball. That's where it should be. We had games yesterday that had runs that were entertaining, but they moved at a much better pace. And that's what fans want. That's what it should be. And I think it was a mindset that batters and pitchers took advantage of for too long. And now you've also put some pressure on the umpires too. Do your job.
Yep.
Keep the game moving. And I appreciate it. And
it's only one game. But I don't think I've ever seen an opening day where you can say it's going to be different this year. And it's going to be. I don't think there's any way around it. As long as they have it like it was yesterday. And the last time they tried to institute a pitch clock or whatever, they just kind of ignored it and whatever. But they're not going to. It's actually, the clock was in every single little score bug and everything else. I like it. And I didn't think I would. And I got to say, I'm all about games because if a Yankees can play in 2 hours and 38 minutes, then anybody can.
Anybody. Because if you get a Boston Red Sox Yankee game under 3 hours.
Yeah, that's when I'll really believe it.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it. I'm tired of 4.5 hour baseball games. That should never happen. Never.
Agree 100. But I couldn't agree more. And, watching LSU Tennessee last night, kind of flipping back and forth. And then even when the Pels started, I was kind of flipping back and forth to see how they would finish. But, the college game is now to the point where they're playing 3.5 hour baseball games. And I've called some Loyola games this season that lasted over 3 hours. I'm like, okay, we're getting absurd. It needs to be changed. It needs to be changed, and I'm glad they're doing something. We'll see if everybody can do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I am for uniform rules. If you're playing the same game, let's get similar rules here.
100%.
And, I think college, there are things, clearly MLB is learning from college baseball. College baseball can keep taking some things from Major League Baseball, too.
All right, you and I have been on the same page for most of the show. We're going to finish it and see if we end on the same page. We're going to finish it by talking a little bit about the New Orleans Saints. Not a lot going on right now, and I don't want to overload with draft talk because the draft's still a month away. You start talking about it, you can't stop, and you talk about the same things over and over again. But we talked on Bayou Bets yesterday on our show here on bet.NOLA.com with Zach Ewing and Spencer Urquhart, all our friends at bet.NOLA.com. But we talk about the draft, and the number one topic right now is, if you're a Saints fan or if you're a Saints follower, what are the Saints going to do with the first part of the draft? What do they need most? And all these mock drafts that we've been seeing, or not all of them, but most of them, have the Saints either drafting an interior defensive lineman or a tight end. And to me, David, I understand the Saints needed defensive tackle before, but I don't necessarily think they need that now. It's certainly not a number one need. And I know the Saints aren't always need first. They whoever's first on the draft board is a lot of times what they do. But I think the Saints have to go either running back, offensive lineman, or wide receiver. You can put them in whatever order you want. I personally put running back first. But to me, the first 3 picks, or at least the first 2 picks in my opinion, or 2 of the first 3, need to be from those 3 positions.
I'm definitely a big fan of them taking an offensive lineman because I do not think that the Saints can feel confident about what they have at the line. 2 years ago, those names on paper all looked really good, but I don't think anybody's satisfied with where Cesar Ruiz is as a player. Ryan Ramczyk the last 2 years has not been the Ryan Ramczyk who was of his first 3 years in the NFL. Trevor Penning is a guy coming off of injury and a rookie essentially in the NFL. Andrews Pete has never been the guy that
saved him for last.
That has lived up to what you'd expect him to be, and he gets, like as we talked about offline, he gets injured walking to the huddle. So, and this is a line that is all of these guys have missed time, unfortunately.
And Eric McCoy as well.
And Eric McCoy as well. So you look at this line and you can't feel confident that you have enough depth. And we have seen over the last 2 years, as soon as this line gets fractured, the offensive production goes to a standstill. It doesn't matter how good your quarterback is. You invested in Derek Carr, you got to protect him. So you spend all this money on your quarterback, you better make sure that that line is good to go.
And you talk about Derek Carr, he has played with, let's be nice and say, shoddy offensive lines throughout most of his 9-year career. So, which is kind of interesting that he comes here, because I think that you have to look at the Saints since Drew Brees left, and the offensive line has been on decline, been in major decline. And look, they tried to address it drafting Trevor Penning last year. We don't know if, I mean, he didn't get enough. I thought last year was going to be, hey, going into last year, you just plug him in there, you let him take his licks, and at least in year 2, it'll be kind of like Teron Armstead. I thought when Teron Armstead started, remember that game he came in against the Panthers, he looked lost.
Right.
And by next season, he looked like, maybe not like the Armstead that we ended up seeing, but ready to play National Football League football. And so Trevor Penning, like you say, I mean, he's basically a rookie. I think I wouldn't be upset at all if they went offensive line here. Get as much help as you can get there.
Absolutely. I think you have to. You need guys who with some size. You need some road graders too, because the one thing the Saints have not been able to do is run the football. You know, we talk about as bad as the quarterback play has been, but they can't run the football. Alvin Kamara's been averaging under 4 yards a carry for the last 2 seasons. So until they can reestablish the running game, yeah, you got Jamal Williams, but he had a decent running line in front of him in Detroit last year that with some continuity. Those guys didn't get hurt. So you've got to see some continuity with this line, and there is none right now. We've never seen this group together. So how can we know how good they're going to be?
It's going to be an interesting scenario, and it'll play itself out over the course of the next month or so. David, I want you to come back if you can before this Pelican season is completely over. Obviously, we hope they make the champion. I mean, we hope they make the real playoffs. That would be great if they could make the top 6, but can't expect it. But if they make that play-in game, would love to have you back, and we'll talk Pels again.
Absolutely. You know how to get me.
Sounds good. And we thank you for watching out there, for spending time with us on this Friday morning, as you do every Friday at 9:15 a.m. Also, again, if you enjoyed the conversation with David and I, we will make this part. This is part of the regular podcast. I will add my monologue. It'll be up by around noon. Wherever you get your podcast, you can listen to Dattitude, whether you want to listen to it this afternoon or over the weekend. We appreciate you for being a part of the Dattitude family. We will talk to you next Friday. Have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy all the basketball. We'll talk to you later.